Alrighty then, should have started. Let's see, it's not showing up, but whatever, have to wait for it. Alright, so stream has begun. Don't want to edit it. I don't want to cancel it. I want to do this, pop the thing out. Okay, did that. Logistics. Alright, so we will eventually get to an Ian Gosling video. Ian, whatever. But first we'll probably do this Brozo video. Can't see that, but you'll really need to, I suppose. This video show that. But first, I guess we'll play this again, because apparently people don't get it, and they're just going to keep arguing as if they're arguing with me. Alright, so there's people who are opposing what I'm saying, and then they're opposing it with experiments that clearly are in conflict with what much of conventional physics believes, and yet they're talking as if they're arguing with me when what they're arguing with is established physics. So I'll play this a couple of times. Played it already. What does it mean? So if you're going to say Professor Lewin's wrong, then explain how he's wrong. Now, I showed how he was wrong when he did his little fake clay experiment.
Will get half the speed. And so now you're going to see that one car will go twice as slow as the other. That's the only way that nature can conserve momentum. Nature has no choice. Nature can deal with kinetic energy one way or another, but it cannot finagle momentum. So it must give the more massive car half the speed than it gives the other car. And so
Alright, so the Ian guy is showing an experiment where the momentum is being destroyed, so to speak. The twice as massive car, so to speak, is moving twice as fast. Not half as fast, twice as fast. And he's saying, okay, that's the truth. I don't think it is.
the mass will get half the speed. And so now you're going to see that one car will go twice as slow as the other. That's the only way that nature can conserve momentum. Nature has no choice. Nature can deal with kinetic energy one way or another, but it cannot finagle momentum. So it must give the more massive car half the speed than it gives the other car.
So he's clearly arguing that this rule, this idea that you can't finagle, that it can finagle kinetic energy, but it can't finagle momentum, doesn't just fit for this one circumstance he's talking about, that it's a general rule that nature can't finagle momentum. You have to account for it. So if you're going to say one system has half the momentum, same force, and the outcomes are dramatically different, then you have to explain where it went. So like in the physics girl example of the 10-ton train going 5 miles an hour and the 5-ton train going 10 miles an hour, the idea is if you make a 10-ton train going 5 miles an hour out of a 5-ton train going 10 miles an hour, that is, you just drop extra weight on it, then you have to explain where the momentum went, because now you're going to end up with a product, okay, that is going to have much less kinetic energy, a lot less, and you have to explain where it went. So you're conserving the momentum, which makes sense, perfectly almost, frankly, and yet you're saying it lost half the energy. So you have to understand, what does that mean? How can you conserve the momentum and yet have half the energy? I mean, how can that possibly make sense? Alright, anyway, so we'll play this Brozo clip without sound because, he's just too annoying. So this is the 2 mass, okay, halfway on the lever being propelled by a spring. So this is pretty much what Ian's doing, alright, and this experiment has completely different results than his, and he won't explain that contradiction. He'll just say, I am wrong, and yet he won't account for this kind of glaring evidence that you're doing an experiment that's completely in conflict to an experiment done by your colleague. Okay, and you should explain why your colleague's experiment has a completely different result. Alright, so this is the 2 mass, okay, 1 unit of distance, and yes, Brozo's using a full length lever, but it still just has a spring attached to it at a given point, which could be any point actually, but yes, it's attached. So you have this straight lever, and if you follow it past the fulcrum, there's a spring that's going to be compressed by pulling the lever back. And so the spring, so it's a little different in the sense that Brozo's compressing a spring, this other guy is expanding a spring. Alright. A spring that has no compression in its relaxed condition. So, you know, there are subtle differences, but I mean, the principle should be the same. Same force in, not the same momentum out. That has to be accounted for. Brozo got the same momentum. Alright. So this is the 2 mass. There's the slow motion version. You can see, okay, it's pretty damn slow. You know, life passes before your eyes. Okay. Even in the regular speed, you could see there's the regular speed. Okay, not much to it. Alright, now this is the half mass. And look at the regular, the regular speed. You're going to tell me that's not twice as fast? Yeah, I think it is twice as fast. Alright, even in slow motion, it's incredibly faster, okay, than the other one. You know, the other one took like 5 seconds. This one takes 2, maybe. Yeah. I mean, very fast. Alright, so no accounting for this experiment. So that's all I want you to do, Ian, is if you're going to say I'm wrong, you have to say this experiment is also wrong. So go ahead and say that these results are like fixed or phony or fake. Alright, so that's both together doesn't count because they're both on the lever at the same time, just showing that yes, okay, it's a stick, you can't, you know, it can't help but force one object to go twice as fast as the other. So let's understand that. Yeah, the numbers weren't perfect. It was 19 and 11 instead of 20 and 10, but clearly very close to half the mass, twice the velocity. And I would say if you understand Brozosian experiments, you understand why there might be some problem, because he has the start line in a certain position, you know, up here, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, you can find reasons to be a little suspect. Alright, so we just do that one more time, right? Play it one more time. Alright, there's the, see the 2 mass, slow. Oof, slow, so slow. Very slow, very slow. Little light mass, halfway, twice as far. Oh, very fast. Oh, so fast I couldn't even see it. Oh, fast, fast, fast. Very fast, awfully fast, horribly fast, incredibly fast. Alright. Certainly very close to twice as fast. Exactly as I would predict, by the way. Yeah. But anyway, it's just, so argue with Brozo and argue with Professor Lewin. Say they are wrong. Say Professor Lewin is wrong. I don't have to conserve momentum. So if you're going to do an experiment and you're going to show an experiment that doesn't conserve momentum, then explain why doesn't it conserve momentum and how it's possible that it doesn't have to conserve momentum. So he's put the extra lever on, which is good. Now he could put the rest of the lever on the other end too, just to make it all nice and pretty so we don't have any issues about having to move the piece of wood. I mean, it does dilute the mass. It has to be stated that the whole reason of having the counterbalance is to eliminate any other influence, and then you're just measuring the influence of the weights. So there's already enough stuff to worry about in terms of effects you can have, little defects you can make, so it's always better to prevent any of those defects from existing by just giving it the benefit of the doubt and saying, well, first I'll take a balanced stick and then I'll start adding weights to it. Now, it'd also be nice in this experiment if he could just change the weights over, just switch one weight for the other weight. But he was obsessed about getting him through the center of balance, which, frankly, wasn't what I talked about. But that's somehow important to him. And so now he has this less convertible, so he can't do the same experiment and just switch them on different levers to make sure his levers aren't where the defect is. So these are just basic things you do when you're experimenting. So I guess apparently he's conceded that there was something wrong with the mass ratios, and he's added mass to the two mass. Now, I don't know. Obviously that's just going to make whatever the problem was worse. But yes, we don't have any, what the bolt, does all the extra stuff you added to the piece of wood, is this twice as massive as this? That's you sort of got to establish as a fact that with the plain piece of wood, what did you add here and what did you add here? That's what's got to be understood. And are those two masses in, the same ratio? So anyway, he does this experiment.
This lever now, the same length as this one. Glued that on. I didn't need to do that because it's pine. Very light in comparison to this weight. This weight is about 400.
Okay, so as your own video you link to shows, the guy talking about angular momentum, all you need is a tiny bit of difference. That's what levers do. So a tiny bit of control difference in one area can lead to a huge amount of difference in another area. So to argue that I don't need the extra lever, the extra counterbalancing weight, so they have equal weight, I'd say it's pretty silly. But if you want to argue against it, and then Brozo can argue against quick releases, and you can both sound like the idiots you are. So fine, that's points for my side. The person trying to be careful is the one who's going to look best in this kind of a conversation, frankly. And you're not even trying, as you're showing.
Grams, nearly a pound. Significantly more than the weight of the equipment.
Yeah, it doesn't really, that's not the issue. The issue is you want to make sure that the two of them are moving the same weight, because whether it's a pound and 3 ounces does make a difference.
But anyway, done that, and also I've added extra weight. This washer is the same weight as the nut and bolt and washers out here to compensate with that difference.
Yeah, the same weight isn't what you want. You don't want the nut and bolts to be the same weight. You want the total weight out here to be 1/2 the weight here. That's what you want. So if that's what you're saying, fine. But your water's a little muddy still on establishing that the two objects have inverse masses. One's half the mass for twice the distance. That has to be accurate. Not, close enough.
So that's all compensated. So we're applying the same force to both levers now.
So he says the same force, he says they have the same friction, he says all this stuff, but yeah, whatever.
Somebody was saying that the reason I'm doing this and other people are doing this is because somebody was making the claim that if both these levers...
I think Professor Lewin would make the claim, frankly. He'd say that you have to conserve the momentum. Newton would say you have to conserve the momentum, okay? So whatever force you're putting in, you have to create the commensurate output reaction. And in this case, unless you're going to explain that half the energy was destroyed somewhere in the fulcrum or something, you have to explain why your results are what they are. And they're clearly saying somehow that's not the same momentum. So you put the same force in and somehow you get different momentums out. That's a fact of your experiment. So you have to explain, where did the energy go?
Or accelerated to the same speed.
Yeah, that's exactly what Brozo showed in his video. That they basically accelerate at the same speed. This one moves twice the velocity of this one. Yes, That would be the expected outcome.
This weight is going twice the velocity.
Well, it's obviously not going to do that in your experiment. So why are you saying it's going twice the velocity when in your experiment it won't be?
And therefore the kinetic energy would say that
momentum would say. So momentum would say they have the same momentum. So you got it wrong there. I mean, I'm not going to nitpick about that, but, saying kinetic energy would say. Because first you have to say what would momentum say. And if it's going twice the speed, momentum would say everything's okay. If it's going something less than twice the speed, well, the momentum says where did the momentum go?
Velocity squared.
There's no, velocity squared isn't momentum. And certainly if it's going twice the velocity, then you're saying you're making free energy. So it can't go twice the speed and use your velocity squared thing because that doesn't make any sense. Same force, twice the energy.
Well, it's half the mass, but it's the velocity squared. It should have twice the energy as this one if they were both traveling at the same speed.
Right. Exactly what Brozow's experiment showed, by the way. He made free energy because the yellow ball clearly, by velocity squared, had more kinetic energy, mathematically.
Have more energy off of this weight for the same input force or the same input energy. But that was false. We were saying that's wrong, and we were trying to show that it doesn't accelerate to the same velocity because of the...
Okay, so it does when it oscillates. It's exactly the same velocity when they oscillate. When you put both weights on the same lever and push it with a force, obviously it has to go twice the speed. And then you're saying that in your experiment, no, it doesn't have to. So in Brozow's, it sort of have to. In the pendulum, in the oscillating lever, it has to. But somehow in this experiment, it doesn't have to obey those rules.
No, we're trying to show that. We have shown it. We are showing it.
Yeah, well, whatever. You're showing that you're really kind of clueless because what you're showing violates conventional physics and you're taking no responsibility because you're a weasel. So just say you don't believe in conservation of a momentum, or else explain where the fuck the momentum went. That's your obligation. If you say the momentum isn't there, what Professor Lewin says, you have to find where it went because it has to be there. Okay, nature can't finagle the momentum, so you have to account for it. So if it's not coming out in your experiment in some visual way, you have to say where it's hidden. Where are the blocks, as Feynman would say? Feynman would say you have a certain number of blocks, and you can hide them, but you can never destroy them. They're somewhere. They might not be visible, but they're somewhere.
Two springs, the same force applied to both levers.
I don't know exactly why he always forces these things to be more energy than you need to do your demonstration. So he's pushing them to a pretty substantial compression, which might be part of the problem. Just like Brozow smashing the springs all the way to their limits. Now, these can't oscillate because the spring actually probably gets in the way. So all you're really going to, the only value you can take from this is the initial swing up. Because the swing down is going to be stifled by the fact that it's going to hit the compressed spring. So the spring's going to go back to being relaxed, and now it's just going to get in the way. But whatever. So they don't oscillate. Okay, so what you can see, okay, so the heavy mass is way ahead. Not a little bit ahead, way ahead. Okay, meaning it's got almost, you could almost say it's moving as fast as the one mass half the distance. The half mass twice the distance. It's almost the same speed if you figure this out because it's almost moving, this one lever is moving twice as fast as the other lever. I mean, this point out here, okay, it's moving substantially faster than the other lever. So we're losing a ton of momentum here. Because it's the half mass is moving as slowly as the full mass. So we've almost lost 50% of the momentum. And he's, that's pretty dramatic. So there's 50% of the momentum is gone. Well, where did it go? So you can see this, right? Hopefully. Yeah, okay, you can see it. I don't know if it's worth making bigger, but I try to be, as helpful as possible. Alright, so we'll move that right there. So you can see the one mass is way down here, two mass way up here. So they both started a little lower than this one mass. So the one mass is having a terrible problem getting off the starting line. It's like broke its leg or something. The two mass is way the fuck ahead. Okay, indicating, like I said, you could just look at this distance and say it's got to be almost 50%. That these two objects are in fact moving the same speed, which makes no sense at all. Okay, huge difference. Look at that, way ahead, way the hell ahead. So when Brozo did the experiment, they're just a tiny little bit difference. Little tiny shred of difference. Big giant difference here. Same principle. Same idea. All you do is half mass, twice the distance. Spring creating the force. Same force in, completely different results out. So why are you arguing with me? I mean, clearly you're disputing and debunking Brozo's experiment. So tell him what he did wrong. And maybe he'll inform you of what's wrong with your experiment. Maybe. How much you want to bet that won't happen? Yeah. Alright, so one of them's bounced up to the top, okay, and is now going back down, and the one mass hasn't even got to the top yet. Okay, so look at the huge, gigantic difference. And the difference is a measure of velocity differences. Okay, so after just one swing, the one mass is so far behind. Alright, now it doesn't really matter because the springs, like I said, once they go backwards, they get stalled. So you'll see there'll be no oscillation here. They'll just come up to the finish line, that's it.
It should be.
Okay, it should be. Yeah, I don't think you know anything about what should be. But anyway. So his mechanism is got some flaws in it, right? Because of this short stick, what he's really doing is the springs are pushing pretty aggressively against the bearing. So if the bearing is just rubbing against wood, that's a long way from ideal, right? Right? Yeah. Wood against steel, probably not the best bearing. But who knows? He didn't tell us what his bearing's made out of. So we'll show it one more time.
Quite clear.
So, two mass way ahead again. Just way ahead. Way ahead. I mean, that's a dramatic advantage, and it seems like the advantage starts at the very beginning. So frankly, I would start to blame the friction at the start. The one lever is applying more friction against the motion, and so that is retarding the progress of the one mass. I think that would be the reasonable explanation. I mean, it's almost like where this hits its peak and this one's, just zooming right along. Alright, so frankly, this is how much difference there is in the momentum. So just whatever the distance is in the ends of these two sticks is really just telling you that's how much momentum you've lost. Because frankly, this is obviously not moving at twice the speed. This would be twice the speed where this lever is. It's clearly not moving twice the speed, and you have to account for where all the momentum went. So, I mean, I could play Professor Lewin again. I mean, until you take account for it, right? If you're just going to keep pretending he didn't say it, it isn't a rule, it isn't a concept in physics, you don't have to. When you do an experiment and you don't conserve the momentum, that somehow you don't have to explain why you didn't conserve the momentum. I think you really are obligated to explain. If you're going to say it happened, you didn't conserve the momentum, you're obligated. That's weird. How come it's not there anymore? I closed the video? Well, I guess I might have done that because, frankly, yeah, sometimes it eats up memory. All right, so we won't play it again. All right, so I guess we could look at comments. Oh, Jesus, the horror. All right, so it's got 7 comments. Let's see what the peanut gallery has to say. Hi there, Ian. I think the reason for saying it's down to friction is because he denies inertia. Again, show me what inertia is. So he sent me to a video that says exactly what I'm saying. Inertia is just the fact, okay, that you're changing the velocity of masses. So if you put the same mass at twice the distance, meaning it has to go twice the velocity, well then obviously you've increased the inertia of the system, in the sense you've increased how much energy is required to move it the same amount of distance. It can't roll as fast because it's got to move more material. But there was nothing in the video that showed in any way that inertia is anything other than, well, yes, if you move something twice the fast, you need twice the energy. It doesn't show any squared function. None of that was in any of the videos. So again, angular momentum is just the same as regular momentum. You're just measuring that this part of the battery will go twice as fast as this part of the battery. And that's all. It needs twice the momentum. It will have twice the momentum. It needs twice the energy to be moved. That's all. There's no squared function anywhere. Nowhere to be seen. All right. I've shared this video to him before showing inertia. Skip to around 9:45, so I'm sure it's the same crap. I've already pointed out what does this have to do with anything? I mean, I'm sure it's not going to be a video that has anything to do with the argument. So he doesn't know how to time code a video stamp, which is kind of funny. So this is hilarious. This absolutely shows nothing to do. I mean, it couldn't be more.
Hello there.
Not
I'm
even
Gav.
close.
We're the slow-mo guys. It's been a while, Dan.
So this
since
is
we've
just
used this ridiculous
typical
thing.
I forgot we
show
had
shit.
it, but then it's like absolutely ginormous. It's been sat.
So they shot a video into a Newton's cradle, and somehow he's showing how this is an example of how inertia, the other stuff, is harder to move. What was hard to move here? All you just watches the bullet sharing its energy with the other pieces and giving them all kinds of different velocities. So depending on how heavy the piece is, it moves proportional to how heavy it is. It can absorb the energy, it can't absorb the energy. If it's light, then it's easy to give the velocity to. If it's heavy, it's hard to give the velocity to. So it doesn't do anything but show exactly what I'm arguing.
Hi, Kara. We brought you here today to let you know that.
So there's the bullet, and so they shot it into the wood of the Newton's cradle, right? And so somehow this shows inertia. How does this show any kind of inertia? How does this show anything other than the momentum of the bullet being given to the pieces of the Newton's cradle? Wait for it. There it goes. Okay, so it's just showing the fact that you've gone in, you've expanded the wood. The wood takes a little time to, because it's elastic, takes a little time to get the energy to the surface. When the energy gets to the surface, it's going pretty fast. The little pieces, it has lots of contact, so it pushes the whole thing up. I mean, what does this show? How does this show inertia? It's just amazing. Where's the inertia here?
Ready?
I mean, it really doesn't exist. That's the point, right? It doesn't exist. There's no evidence of inertia. So let's do another one of these. I mean, just amazing. I mean, he posts this as a link. It's supposed to be demonstrating something. It doesn't demonstrate anything at all. So this is right. This is going to hit the balls. So this is really good. Oh, what'd you do?
No. Oh.
Whoa.
Why didn't you show us the clip? Why you gotta do this? Alright. So all the bullet breaks into pieces. So you can see, can you see this shit? Yeah, you can see it. So the bullet, this is the fragments of the bullet. The bullet shatters when it hits the steel. So it's going really fast. It can't get the energy into the steel as fast energy, as velocity. It's got to give it as parts of it as momentum. So the balls are now, okay, gaining velocity. They're accelerating. Okay, you don't see it yet, but they've absorbed the energy, and now the energy is moving through them. All of their atoms are collectively going to move. And so all of a sudden they're going to move. So there's the ball shattering.
Never. It did less. It put.
And you see, because the bullet broke into all these little fragments, all right, they're carrying all the, most of the momentum. But, okay, so the balls react. But look, it just took this much mass, absorbed all the energy fairly well.
Less momentum into the front one.
And down it goes. Now, I wish they didn't speed that up, because that would have been worth seeing at regular speed. I mean, consistent slow motion.
Never. It did less momentum into the front one than the ball bearing.
Oh my god.
That bullet got wrecked.
Get wrecked, son. The thing is, right, I saw the ball bearing go flying down range. Yeah.
Okay. So, it's a Newton's cradle. You put, energy in, and you got energy out. Where is inertia playing a role? So the argument would be, if I picked up all those pieces, I took all the trajectories of all the masses, would I come up with some different number than the momentum that went in? The mass and the velocity in would equal the masses and the velocity out. So where's this an example of inertia absorbing half the energy or destroying half the energy? Because in the example of the lever, it has to destroy it, right? It's not being realized in the experiment, so you have to explain where did it go. And the obvious answer is going to be friction, but he says friction doesn't have anything to do with it. So, you explain it to me. You little lying, scummy rats. Alright, so we'll go back to this. But unbelievable. So he thinks that proves inertia. So I've shared this video with him before showing inertia. So how does shooting bullets at Newton's cradles show inertia? I think if you tried to argue that it is friction on the string causing that to happen, you are either an idiot or a liar. So I don't know what he means by friction on the string, right? I mean, obviously what does happen, if you go through it, you watch the video, when the balls fly off, they have to break the connection. The actual metal connections actually broke when the bullet hit. When the bullet hit, there was such a shock wave that went through, the little welds that were holding the balls to the strings actually just popped off because the balls expanded. So, yeah, you people are just such pieces of shit. I mean, to say that has anything to do with it. So let's just see. He's not easily embarrassed by being shown to be either of those last two things, and he's both. So that's Brozo's great contribution. So even though Brozo's experiment didn't show anything like this, not even close. I mean, the full billiard ball, okay, at half the distance, did maintain consistent momentum with the half billiard ball twice the distance. That's your own experiment, Brozo. Clearly, in Ian's experiment, a completely different result took place. I mean, substantially different. It's so different that the yellow ball would have been moving at the same speed as the blue one. That's how different it is. Can you explain, you weasel? Okay. So, good job. What excuse is next, I wonder? LOL. The excuse is, explain now why you've proven Professor Lewin doesn't understand inertia. Okay, he doesn't understand how momentum works. So explain how he is wrong, and then you can explain how Brozo did a shitty experiment. So show how Brozo's experiment is stupid and shitty, because he got such a wacky result where he conserved the momentum. Just amazing. Oh, he comments again. Lame excuses are his only talent. So again, this is, he usually writes paragraphs. He missed a career opportunity in politics. Blah, 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 blah. Amazing. Well, any literate science you certainly wouldn't know anything about. All right. He seems to be saying we are lying. Okay, so this is this moron. You're the one calling me overtly a liar. And you're saying you're debunking me with an experiment that debunks Professor Lewin and debunks Brozo. Okay. And that half the mass does not move slower. Yes, I'm going to keep saying it because, frankly, there's no theoretical choice. If you believe in physics, it has to, as Professor Lewin, the twice as massive object has to move half the speed. Okay, but the levers are, and that means that half mass cannot be doing 2x the speed. So even though it oscillates perfectly 100 times under those exact circumstances, twice the speed, he's claiming that he's going to prove that he doesn't have to conserve momentum. And that Professor Lewin is wrong and Brozo is wrong. But see, there's just no evidence here that they're so bad at this science thing that they haven't figured out that they have to take all the experiments and put them in the pool and then evaluate and figure out which ones are, when they're in conflict, they have to explain the conflict. So you have to explain why Brozo's results are nothing like yours, when essentially it's exactly the same experiment, right? I mean, it's exactly the same components. A spring is being used to apply the force, and the rest is just the mechanism of the lever. Brozo proved pretty much that levers work. You are saying they don't work. All right. So, and Ian says, thank M8. Yeah, whatever that is. Yeah, he loved using your pool all demo as an example. Okay. So I guess he's missing pool ball. I don't know what. Oh, I guess that's the all. So the all was supposed to be ball. All right. Think M8. Thank mate. Okay, so that's the thank mate crap. So it's like some sort of special whatever. British code. Yeah, he loved using your pool ball demo as an example. Yeah. Okay, so where do you think this is going to go? I wonder if Brozo, so this is 2 hours ago, so yeah, Brozo hasn't had a chance to respond yet, of how he's correct. Yes, that's what I did. I'll continue to use it because, frankly, it's a pretty decisive win for my side. Okay, and yet every other experiment you do is a pile of XXXX. Well, I've never said that Professor Lewin can't do experiments, so I've never said that every one of Professor Lewin's experiments is a piece of shit, all right, except the one that was an obvious piece of shit. And for Brozo, it's the other way around. Every now and then, he accidentally does an experiment correctly. But yes, it is his intuitive nature to cheat and fuck it up. All right. Funny that A. So instead of accounting for the completely opposite conclusion you could draw from these two experiments, one says exactly the opposite of the other experiment, right? They're in direct contradiction, and this is how he deals with that direct contradiction. Is to say, well, I guess your experiment is a piece of shit, but I won't say that. Right? Mine's really good. Yours must have really sucked because the results are different. Amazing duplicity. I mean, I'm just showing, okay? I mean, obviously I've claimed these are hypocrites and liars and duplicitous and they don't have any good motives. They don't give a shit about science. It's so obvious right here. He knows the Brozo results are completely the opposite. That's why I'm defending that one experiment. That's why I showed it at least 10 times now is because, yeah, it pretty much confirms exactly what I said. So, yeah, I'm defending it. And he says, so he's conceding that, and yet he's not accounting for why his results are completely different. Yeah, okay. I mean, there's no other word. This is duplicity. Are you watching Dispar? See, you're hanging out with these little pieces of scum who are doing this. This is completely dishonest. Can you admit that that's completely dishonest? I didn't prove the experiment. I didn't prove the contrary experiment. I didn't provide it. Brozo provided it. So why isn't he arguing with Brozo? Why isn't he arguing with Professor Lewin? Why are you arguing with me? He's the one saying he can destroy momentum. Don't you think he should account for how he can do that in a world that says you can't? Okay. LOL. Is it time to move on from this yet? So he thinks it's a decisive proof. Even though Brozo's experiment is in direct contradiction, it's time to quit. We've already proven it, haven't we? We have a yes answer and we have a no answer. Haven't we proven the case? Shit. All right. Oh, good. We have more from Steve. So Steve, well, yeah, this is 10 hours ago. Okay. Oh, good. A big pile of shit. This will take, oh, look at all this. Oh, this will be great. Okay, let's do the little comments first, because I'll never get to them. So I can do a 2-hour video, no problem. We don't need it this big. Sorry about that. Fix that, Gary. You got to check in now and then to make sure what the people are seeing is the same as what you're talking. Yeah, I got to do that. Logistics, blah, 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 blah. All right, there's a better view of the comments. See if there's anything in that little chatty thing. I don't think so. Looks empty to me. Yeah. Alright, so we'll just get on with the comments. So let's see what Walker said. Don't move on yet, Ian. If you show me your equation for the inertia in this experiment, I will show you my equation for the angular momentum in Goofy's lever. Alright, so the fact that these equations are just made up, right? We're just talking about mass and velocity. And the only issue is whether you arbitrarily square the velocity. So you can't really fuck up the actual substantive values that are in the equation. The value numbers, the real numbers, are just mass and velocity. And you're just perverting one of the numbers. Yeah, okay. Don't know if I have to look it up, John. I think they call it the mass moment of inertia. So again, it just has to do with the fact if the object is twice as far out, it to conserve momentum has to be twice half the mass. So it's just that's all there is. That's the lever equation. Yeah. Please see my reply posted by mistake under a reply to DD's last reply, LL. Whatever this is. Please see my, I don't know what that is. Got it, mate. Thank you. Well, I sure didn't get it. So the Iron Guy made a reply somewhere, but we'll never see that, I guess. I don't know where it is. Alright, so the Brozo slop. You've done a great job, Ian. So he basically did an experiment debunking Brozo's experiment, and he's saying it's a great job. So Brozo's conceding his experiment sucked. He got shitty results, and laughably silly. They're so bad. They're so far off. They're 80% off. They're so bad. I mean, he didn't destroy the momentum like he was supposed to, and he did it all wrong. Okay. Anyway. Of eliminating every possible objection a person can make if they're determined to deny reality. So even though Brozo's experiment is completely diametrically shown a completely different reality, that is within, a 5% margin, okay, 19 and 11 is a lot different than what this experiment showed, which was 11 and 10. So 19 and 11 and 11 and 10. These morons can't recognize that that's way off. Yeah, right. Sure they can. They just don't care because that would be what a scientist would notice. A scientist would notice the two experiments are completely inconsistent. The outcome is completely diametrically, almost perfectly opposite. So they're almost perfectly opposite results. Okay. Your explanations are as good as your experiment itself. So there was no explanation of anything. He still didn't even clearly define what the hell he's using as a bearing and what the hell weights he had on the damn sticks. Alright, anyway. Clear and concise, except completely uninformative. Alright, I tend to waffle on too much. Yes, you tend to talk, which is just terribly repugnant. We all realize Gary is a hopeless case, a lost cause. So just understand, they're calling somebody a lost cause because they see a direct contradiction. Right? One juror says guilty, the other one says innocent. And yet, we've proven him innocent. Yeah, okay. I don't think so. Anyway, so the idiot is the person who sits in the background and says, wait a minute, you didn't do that, right? The jury didn't agree. Aren't you supposed to have like a mistrial and do it over again? Yeah, that's the idiot. So we stand little chance of changing his mind. Yes, with garbage, okay? With yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Yes, you're not going to change my mind with that waffly bullshit. So go ahead and tell me, Brozo, do you really think Ian just proved that there's no conservation of momentum? Do you agree there's no conservation of momentum? It's not a rule? You don't have to do it? Will you say something, you weasel? I mean, you stupid little piece of shit. You do all this shit talking, and you take no account for what you're saying directly. In your opposition to me on these subjects, you're really opposing conventional physics, and you won't even... I mean, you're such a weasel. You won't acknowledge that, yes, I think they're wrong about whatever this inertia thing is. All right. His mind, for the simple reason that his entire objective is to defend and distract with the same old tired arguments. So it's a tired old art. Conservation of energy is a tired subject, is a tired concept. Why should we be bothered with that? All right. And don't deal with what he is being shown. So what was I shown? I was shown an experiment that completely contradicts one of your experiments. Okay. And he won't test himself. Yeah, I've already explained why. I think somebody competent ought to do it for a change. That would be a nice change, wouldn't it? Somebody who's competent did the experiments instead of you people. Okay. He can't stay on the subject. So that's amazing. I've been stuck on this subject for 2 fucking goddamn years. Isn't the subject diagramming a lever, and you're the one who keeps evading it. You keep evading just doing the little arrows with the lever and showing us where the energy goes. For 10 seconds without citing equally ridiculous examples of his claim, like your own experiment. Yes, I cite your experiment. Should I play it again? I'll play your experiment again. Should I do it again? Oh. As if those examples trump yours. Well, the fact is they can't coexist. One of the experiments was done poorly, done badly, because the results are in diametrical opposition. Okay. Which of course they don't. Okay, those are trump yours, which of course they don't. So the big example I've used is Brozo's experiment, okay, in terms of confirming what the oscillator shows, which is, yes, the mass twice the distance has to move with twice the velocity, as Professor Lewin sort of said. Okay. Each example he touts out a few hundred times per year needs to be dealt with separately to expose the flaws in his thinking. And you haven't done any of that. So no one's explained the bowling ball. How can the same momentum knock down more pins? So the argument is I have explained how bowling balls work. Okay, they hit pins, they give the pin energy from the ball, goes into the pins. So as the pins gain energy, the ball loses energy in exact proportions, because it's really just momentum being lost to the pins. Now you should explain how that conserves kinetic energy. How, for example, you can add up the movement of the pins and say the 8-pound ball gave the pins more energy. All right. And you haven't certainly explained how you have some sort of piece of evidence somewhere that 5-ton trains going 10 miles an hour actually produce more energy than 10-ton trains going 5 miles an hour. And so much more energy that it's actually twice as much energy. That if you were on the market to buy some trains, you, okay, would certainly buy, if I was giving away the 10-ton trains for, $25 and you had to pay $100 for the 5-ton train, you'd buy the $100 train. Even though I can buy 4 10-ton trains with the same money. And you think I'm the sucker? No, you're the sucker. Okay, even my own experiment, the pool balls, well, here we go. He's conceding his experiment sucked. Okay, good. Even my own experiment with the pool balls, which I concede was flawed in respect of the half-mass skidding. Yeah, so he says that's a flaw, when I'd argue, yeah, you're going to have to try to figure out how it's a flaw, a major one in any way. How that's less friction. Skidding is less friction. I mean, often the case is that skidding is more friction, because you're basically tearing the rubber off tires and all that kind of stuff. So you'd have to explain how you're a skid expert. Okay, but whatever. So now he's saying that half the velocity of the two-mass object, the heavier cue ball, was absorbed in angular momentum. Clearly nowhere close. It's a tiny amount of angular momentum, frankly. The rotation of the cue ball was absorbing a tiny amount of energy compared to the full energy of the ball, moving a rather substantial speed. So he needs to see, I mean, if he thought that much kinetic energy was in the ball, theoretically, if you could get the spin the other way, it would shoot something, way up in the air because it's spinning so fast. Clearly, it wasn't spinning that fast. All right, so he needs to see it done again with heavier masses so they go slower and don't skid. I think it's even better to have them both skid, frankly. So if you can get them both to skid, that would be the way to do it. All right, you won't have long to wait to see that. Take a bit of pressure off you with a bit of luck. Great, let's see another experiment. Good. So let's see if he contrives the experiment to make it worse or to make it better. So we'll see what he does. I'm betting on he'll fuck it up some way. He'll add some other kind of bullshit to make it not work. All right, he's very unkind and inconsiderate, to put it mildly. So Brozo really thinks there's some internal flaw in the spring pushing on the lever. So even though his lever was the right length, his spring was an aircraft spring. He had all these conditions. He meticulously carved the pool ball. He did all these things to make it right, and he thinks his is much wronger than the other guy's experiments, which is just kind of funny. All right, to put it mildly, so I can appreciate the temptation to give up educating him. So, yeah, all you're educating me on just how scummy humans are. So, yes, I've already had that education. Thank you very much. But you're just proving the point over and over, just adding more and more evidence to confirm human beings should be squished by aliens because they have no character, no decency. They don't give a fuck about the truth. They're just lying, compulsive, lying pieces of scum. Alright, and his sorry bunch of admirers who are completely deluded and heavily influenced by his cunning stunts. So again, this is a cunning stunt. You see, this video is a cunning stunt somehow. Alright, I play a quote from Professor Lewin. I play the fucking video evidence that we have. I point out the simple truth that the two experiments don't agree at all. And that makes me cunning. Okay. Yeah, it's just such crap. This is such desperate crap. So instead of making a physics argument, he types all of this crap. I wish I could promise it would be worth it, but we all know the truth. The game to him, it's a game to... He has no intention of accepting any goals against him. I don't know whatever. He always scored a goal. He scored a goal. Yay! I say my experiment says yes, his experiment says no. That means we get a point for contradicting ourselves really well. Oh, no matter how firmly you plant the ball. So, man, he says this is very firm evidence when he has two directly contradictory experiments. That's firm evidence. All right, his fans just happen to be looking away when that happens to turn around just in time to hear Gary, the ref, saying, "Do you see that? He handled the ball." I don't know. There's real issues about how you do your experiments, you moron. So these aren't uninteresting subjects to scientists, okay? The idea that you can fuck it up by doing it poorly. So, you really think, I'm just saying, all the great scientists of all time, I mean, the meticulousness of Cunningham, what the fuck was his name? The guy who did the measuring gravity thing. I mean, insane, meticulous detail. Because he knew it was a precise experiment and he needed to do it well. And you just couldn't give a shit, you rubbish dumpster diving piece of crap. And they all go, yay, well, whatever. I mean, his obsession with the crowd. I don't see the crowd, frankly, but whatever. I mean, he's just totally obsessed with the crowd, cheering. I'm glad you extended the lever to the same length. Well, so you noticed that too. Not because it was necessary. Oh, yes, it wasn't. So again, these morons will sit there and say, it doesn't matter that it's the same weights. So you can fuck up the weight all you want. Yeah, add 8 ounces, subtract 10. Who cares? We don't have to have the same weights. I mean, that's what they're overtly saying here. The only reason why you have the extra lever is to guarantee that you have the same weights. You obviously don't have the same weight if it's not on there. I mean, it's just amazing what they just don't care about. All right. It wasn't for exactly the reason you said. And what was the reason he said? He didn't explain why you don't need the extra. You don't need to make sure your lever is balanced. You're doing a balancing experiment and it doesn't matter whether your balance is balanced. Oh, I get it. So the scale doesn't have to be properly calibrated. Oh, okay. Go ahead and measure things with an uncalibrated scale. That's what he's overtly saying there. Fuck calibration. Fuck zeroing the scale. Just leave the extra digits on there. Who cares? I mean, I just, you can't defend it. I mean, there's no way I should even have to make these arguments. It should be obvious to anyone reading this crap that, gee, these people really couldn't care less about the science. They're trying to do it with less and less integrity and to defend doing it sloppier and sloppier. So you're seeing that, bros? I mean, Dispar? They ridiculed you for making some mistakes, but they like mistakes. They're embracing doing it badly. You're seeing that, aren't you? They're making defenses for doing it wrong. Will you call them on it? No, you won't. Because you're a piece of scum. Okay, anyway. But it's another excuse less to him. So again, he's calling these excuses that you really should, do it as precisely as within your means. Alright, I had the same dilemma. Do I shorten my lever? And again, understanding that you're doing a weight experiment and you're saying, should I cut weight off the lever? Well, obviously that would be stupid. And so you did do that in your little catapult experiments. He called them trebuchets, but they were catapults. There was no weight. There was no gravity causing the force. Clearly not trebuchets. But he doesn't care. It's a technical detail. We don't care about any of those details. All right. If it's carrying unnecessary mass as far end when there isn't supposed to be any in one example. So again, he still doesn't really understand that any mass you're moving at twice the velocity means you have to account for a lot of extra energy to move it at twice the velocity. So the mass at the end of the stick matters because that mass is going faster. And that means it's taking more energy to move it. Duh. Anyway, but like you said, it makes so little difference when the lever is so light compared to the masses involved. And so light is, it weighs maybe a quarter. That's not so light. I mean, the whole wooden lever probably weighs a quarter, 200 grams or so, of the 600 or 700 you might have for the whole lever with weights. So why is he saying stuff is stupid? Okay. You know you're doing something right when he makes daily videos. I've made daily videos for 2 years, but whatever. Attacking us as they say we are desperate to prove him wrong. Well, this sounds pretty desperate. You're saying that your experiment was it got completely wrong results because the 2 mass rolled and the 1 mass skidded. Okay, so that's it. Now, I'm not saying those aren't factors. I'm just saying they can't be enough of a factor to explain the dramatic difference between your experiment and his experiment. And again, he's saying all this in light of the fact that the lever oscillates perfectly with a 4, 1 mass, 4 units of distance to a 4 mass, 1 unit of distance. And it oscillates perfectly. And you could extrapolate to an 8, to to 1/8. You could extrapolate to really divergent mass to velocity ratios and recognize that it has to conserve the momentum. The momentum on one side of the lever has to equal the momentum on the other side. But Brozo says no, it doesn't. And he won't provide any logic explaining why it doesn't. Alright. Let's see. Say desperate to prove him wrong, as if that indicates a personality flaw. Yeah, I think it does. Your motivation isn't the truth. Your motivation is just to be contrary to me. That's it. Like we shouldn't just accept anyone saying any amount of nonsense. So he just keeps calling it nonsense when he's the side that hasn't produced any evidence in 350 years. So he's defending a theory based on solitons and monads, really. Okay, he hasn't explained what any of those are. And a theory that hasn't been defended by a preponderance of evidence. So in the history of the kinetic energy formula, what do we have as the bullet point experiments? Right? Dropping round things into clay in the 1700s, and Ian Gosling with his wooden levers. Otherwise, nothing. Not a single piece of experimental evidence. Alright, it's not us putting videos out every day about exactly the same thing usually, not even coming up with anything new. Well, why should I come up with anything new when you haven't responded to the old? The whole point of making an argument is to say, well, these are the important arguments in order. Yeah, until I get a response to those important arguments, why should I change the subject, jackass? The subject is, do you believe in conservation of momentum? Professor Lewin is indicating he does. Why do you disagree with him? So why don't you just explain why you disagree with Professor Lewin? Okay. Anything new to say might warrant a 10-minute video. No. So again, he hasn't made a single Brozo in the 2 years will not make a video explaining any of the theory. So he just won't go anywhere near it. Alright, now that Muppet makes an hour or even 3 hours. So we know it's a live video and it contains a a chat portion, all that kind of stuff, and the whole video isn't really doing that. But regardless, the point is it's physics, okay? You want to do it in 13 seconds because you're a propagandist and a liar and a cheater. That's why you want to do it in 13 seconds. Okay. Repetitive word salad. So the word salad is, could you please draw a lever and explain how it doesn't conserve momentum? So just do that for me. draw the lever and explain how when I use a lever out in the yard or I use it somewhere to move something, that it doesn't conserve the momentum. Okay, if that's not desperate, I don't know what is. So, just an amazing pile of tripe. All right. So, but we have the concession from Brozo. Brozo saying his experiment's a piece of shit. Okay, so when I showed you the billiard balls, he says his concession is my experiment sucked. That's what he basically just said. Okay, so if we go back to this, he's saying it's a piece of shit. Okay, so the results here are garbage. And instead of taking the video down and admitting, oh, it's a garbage experiment, he's left it up. He hasn't qualified at all that it's a shitty results. The results are way off. So there's no comment in here saying, oh, this is a piece of garbage. Don't pay any attention. It's not here. You know, and all this mush he typed here, it's not in here. He says, I have shown the most boring math. There's no math. There's just him adding up, you know, doing 4 experiments and then he takes the averages. That's all the math in here. There's no math in here. It's not being used to oscillate, which is quite obviously a pendulum. So he keeps saying a lever's a pendulum, which no, isn't true. Well, anyway, we've already done this video, but I mean, he hasn't qualified this with a big notice that says, don't pay any attention, my experiment's a piece of shit. So we'll just watch it again, right? Why not? So that's the one where he does both balls at the same time. No, it's not both. This the yellow one's the important one. Okay, so this is where the experiment actually starts. Alright, so that's the heavier ball, 1 unit of distance. And the thing you can see is that it does create just a tiny bit of angular direction. So the ball always comes back forward of where it left. So you do lose a tiny bit of energy moving the ball in the wrong direction. So you can see it's a minor amount of rotation. So just if you added up those 3 little turns the ball takes and the amount of momentum that would be in the downward direction, I mean, it's a tiny amount of momentum relative to the entire momentum of the ball. The rotational skidding, see, it actually does skid on its way back. After it hits the wall, it loses its rotational energy to the wall and then has to regain it again going back. Now it does absorb a little bit of energy, but it's a very little bit. Now the yellow one, as I pointed out, does just skid across the surface, but skidding is still friction. It's a lighter ball, obviously can afford to skid. Now you could see that when it did hit the wall, it did rotate on the way back. So it was going slow enough coming back that it did rotate. But it certainly doesn't rotate going forward. But look how much faster that was. It was so fast you couldn't even see it. It was so much faster. So he's saying that little difference between skidding and rolling accounts for the fact that in his experiment this ball is clearly going 90% faster than the first ball, like something like that. Very close to 2 to 1. And Ian's experiment was 1 to 1. Very close to 1 to 1. Completely different results. I mean, that's just jetting across. So the 9 really didn't rotate. So this one did skid, but like I said, when it does come back, you can sort of see it does start to roll. But it's lighter. I have to say, it's obviously got a little less friction because it's lighter. So, you know, I have titled these videos Friction and Contact because, frankly, yeah, I mean, everybody's just fucking the subject up. There are subtleties to it, but, you know, Brozo has an experiment where he bounces a cart back and forth, which is the same thing, really. It's just letting it go in one direction, right? So the number of times it goes back and forth just has to do, again, with the same argument about rolling friction and how much distance you can travel. And, you know, the argument is if you're going twice as fast, you will roll 4 times the distance. but you're rolling 4 times the distance because your velocity means you've had a whole lot less friction while you're traveling. I mean, it's not a complicated argument for them to take that sentence and debunk it and show how, no, the friction is perfectly the same for every foot. Every foot pulls the same amount of energy out of the object. So it doesn't matter how fast it goes, it weighs the same. So, I mean, I've made these arguments, right? These are the ones he just he dismisses them as if they're redundant and somewhere somebody explained how it's not true. But I mean, I made this simple argument. I put a scale. Let's say there's a flat road and I put this scale down. You can understand if you walk really slowly, you'll weigh your weight. But the faster you can get across the scale, the less weight you'll put on the scale. And if you go really, really fast, it's like the scale won't even notice that something drove across it because it's going so fast. That's a truth. And it's a truth you should account for and explain to me why that doesn't mean anything. The fact that less energy is collected by the ground, and that's what the scale proves, that less energy is collected by the ground, that somehow that doesn't change how much energy the thing that's moving has. That it doesn't matter how much contact it has with the ground. That doesn't affect its velocity. I mean, that's so fucking stupid. You know, and the fact that they won't concede that fact that, yes, things going fast heat the ground less. Less of their velocity is lost to the contact they have with the ground. They're hitting fewer pins, so to speak. So their bowling ball maintains its velocity because it didn't give it away to the ground. Show me where any of these morons have dealt with that argument. Because they haven't. Alright. So, yeah, we could play it again and again and again. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah. It's just, boom! Yeah. Oh no, that's not twice. Oh yes, it is twice as fast. Insanely fast. Very fast. Crazy fast. And so Brozo says this experiment is wrong. And now he's going to redo it, okay, where this will go half as fast. Less than, you know, it'll go 0.4 faster than the blue one. So he'll break the experiment. He'll rig it in some way to force the result. Because, oh yeah, this result is wrong. Yeah, way off. Alright, so that ought to be entertaining. Disappointing and all of that crap, but, you know, you can't deny the entertainment value of just the way he cheats. Okay, I don't know if I need to... Yeah, no one's commenting, so we'll just see how many people are here, and if there's nobody here and no one's commenting, then I'll just move about my way. So, just irritating. Alright, so what do I want to check here? Right? Yeah. So we have 7 viewers. 8 it says. 7, 8, I don't know. So not great. And such. Let's see how long I've been in here. An hour and 13 minutes, so yeah. So Wednesdays aren't too good. Yeah, I guess. So we'll see if anybody comments in the next couple of minutes, and if not, then I will see you next time. And such. Oh, I do have a comment. I forgot. Yeah, that's right. I do get the website comments over with too while I'm here. And they are, where the hell are they? Somewhere around here, I believe. Yeah, that'll do. Alright, let's see what kind of crap is here. Reload it. Oh, there's a new one. Alright. I wanted to clear a mistake you made. Okay. For space travel, you wouldn't use 1/2 mv squared or mgt. Well, you say so. I think you'd always use mgt because it's always about how much time you are in the gravity. Oh, whatever. Because your velocity and mass are constantly changing. your velocity and mass are technically constantly changing anywhere in space. So right on Earth, it's constantly changing. We're talking about the relative changes. We're talking about the ones where, like, say you're orbiting something and you just want to find how close you are to the object you're orbiting or the object that you're going to be influenced by. But that's it. You're just measuring the difference between two objects. Two objects have different vectors. They're going different ways. And you're measuring that interaction. So don't play these games. Anyway, usually you use the differential equation of motion for an interstellar body. So this is just a pile of crap. But whatever. There's no squared necessary in any of this. So the squares can completely be removed and you'll get perfectly rational proportional answers. So it's just a lie. And of course there is a dt in here. But regardless, I mean, I'm just saying, the lunar module was landed on the moon based on calculating how much momentum they were shooting out of the ship. And they navigated to the moon by understanding the gravity was about how long you're in the gravity. That's how much gravity you'll have to counter, is how much time are you in the gravity, and that will decide how much thrust you need to counter that much gravity. So, whatever. Go ahead and lie. It's all right with me. I'm just saying I can calculate the correct answers without that formula. So if you want to have that contest, we can have it. But I want it in some more real way with some kind of real person. There's no point in having it without a real person present. I'm saying all you need to know is how far are you from the gravity of the mass. All you need is its gravitational constant. And then all you need to know is your distance and how fast you're going, and that'll tell you how much time you're going to be in the gravity. Alright. More lies and deception. I don't need to square nothing. Okay. When you and Dr. Castro had the marbles on a stick, what is this? You used double the mass. There's no Dr. Castro involved in anything, so I don't know what the fuck this person's talking about. You get 4 times the time when a ball hits with 2x. So let's see. Had the marbles on the stick. Did you use double the mass to get 4 times the time when the balls hit with 2x the mass? Did you double the mass to get 4 times the time? What are you talking about? Double the mass is 4 times the time? Well, anyway, never mind. And it's not a lie. Go watch the videos, you dolt. The heavier object moved faster. So I'm just saying, in the one experiment he did, the one I was responding to, it clearly moved slower. And it had to move slower because of how little it rebounded. So it bounces, comes down on the spring and barely goes up. Obviously the other one had to go substantially faster because it bounced at least twice as high, maybe 3 times as high. Had to have more energy, which in this case means more velocity. Alright, go ahead and count the frames, you absolute meathead. No, why doesn't he do that? Okay, so, his experiment's pretty much a visual piece of shit. Alright, he's making a claim that it's going faster when clearly it has less energy. It's not going faster, it has less energy. Alright. No one is resorting to anything. You're a nasty individual, so you get nasty comments and respond. It's that simple. But I don't generally get nasty comments and response. It's only a few, 5 people, okay, who, have each other's, have things up each other's asses. Okay, also very cute how you often using the phrase center of mass. I mean, it's a high school phrase. Now, when you were obviously totally oblivious to the concept a few weeks ago. So that's just a lie. I often talk about the center of mass in lots of these conversations. So, I mean, you don't think I can find a video from 2 years ago where I used the word center of mass? I played Professor Lewin's videos, right? So I played 50, 60 of Professor Lewin's actual lecture videos and commented on them. So, just a lie. Just to clarify, in both mindless marbles and ING, the larger mass objects move faster, not slower. So again, you're not clarifying anything. It clearly did not move faster. All right. So we already did the crank comment. Okay, so that's it for that. Let's see if there's any comments on the website, which I doubt. Yep, just the Eric Dillard. Oh God, I should just probably delete this because it's Eric Dillard. I mean, there's no point in pretending he's somewhere on planet Earth. So we'll just remove it. No point in advertising he's way oversold as it is. I mean, his wacky video has 1 million views and it's whatever 3 hours long and completely incomprehensible. It might as well be Ken Wheeler talking. Alright. So, I guess we go back to the live page, and we now have 10 viewers. Yeah, so it didn't enhance the game much, unfortunately. Alright. So, 2-minute warning. And such. Ah. Ah, very nice. Anyway, guess we could check in on the poor old Snake Plisskenus and see what he's up to. But yeah, probably shouldn't. It'll be something tragic and stupid. Let's see. So he was hoteling day to day. Yeah, so that was the last video. So, who knows what has become of him and such. Alright, so we'll probably just get rid of this. Superfluous to my purpose. Alright, so it looks like no one has anything to contribute, so we'll move along. And yeah, that's just yuck. Alright, so it's good. So more lever experiments. I'm going to do the one where the lever is horizontal on the ground, okay, and then you just swing the weights into the lever, and again, all you really have to do is show that the lever will allow you to convert a 10 mass object going 5 velocity into a 5 mass object going 10 velocity. And as soon as you do that, you've proven free energy by the kinetic energy theory. So obviously that won't happen. It will happen, that you will be able to convert a 10-ton train going 5 miles an hour. The energy from it will create a 5-ton train going 10 miles an hour, and that fact will prove there is no kinetic energy. It's a made-up concept. It doesn't have any validity because that will not be free energy. You will not ever use that energy. It will never move anything in the universe because it's not real. So when that experiment is conducted, it will decidedly prove kinetic energy unviable. The one Toadie's working on with the Newton's cradle to some extent can show it, but it can't do the perfect conversion, which is the only downside. So, but it might be able to do it with a spring, but we'll see. We'll see what kind of additions he can do to it to see if he can quantify the motion, the momentum. And that's really all you need to do, because if you do that correctly, every time you use a heavy object going slow and you create a light object going fast, you will be making free energy. Anyway, but we'll see how it goes. Yeah. So I guess that be it. Oh, wait a minute. There looks like there is a comment here. Hello. Looks like I am way too late. Yes, looks like it. Everybody else isn't here either. They're all way too late. So there's just a little too little action in the chat to justify my presence here. You know, I'm not needed. So I can go on and do other things that I don't want to do. Which is a substantial part of life, unfortunately. Doing a bunch of stuff you don't want to do. Alright, anyway, so till the next time, and such, and so forth, and whatnot. This has been draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com also, and such video presentation.